President-elect Trump again downplaying the assessment of 16 U.S. intelligence agencies that Russia hacked American computers, tampered, in effect, with American democracy. This time, his words come just hours after the sitting president unleashed sanctions on Moscow and left open the possibility of more action to come. In a moment, what Trump said just a short time ago. But first, CNN's Athena Jones on the sanctions. She joins us now. She's in Hawaii traveling with the president. So, Athena, explain these sanctions and in particular why the president took these actions now.
Well, the president, Jim, is calling these actions necessary and appropriate and saying they're coming after repeated public and private warnings to the Russian government. He says that all Americans should be alarmed by Russia's actions, and he repeated his assertion that these activities could only have been directed by the highest levels of the Russian government. And so what are the steps the U.S. is taking? Well, the Treasury Department has named 9 entities and individuals who are now going to be subject to expanded sanctions. Among those, Russia's military intelligence unit and its chief, also the Domestic Security Service. The State Department, as you mentioned, is declaring 35 Russian intelligence operatives persona non grata and giving these spies 72 hours to leave the country. The government is also shutting down 2 Russian government-owned compounds, one in New York and one on the eastern shore of Maryland, not far from Washington, D.C. Now, the White House says Russia shouldn't be surprised by these actions, and they're stressing that the announced moves are not the, quote, sum total of our response. The U.S. is also taking covert measures, and all of this is aimed at delivering a message to Russia, that message that there are costs and consequences to their actions. Jim?
Reaction so far from the Kremlin, then?
There is a reaction. They've vowed reciprocal measures, and those measures are already beginning. Russian authorities have ordered the American School of Moscow to close, according to a U.S. official briefed on the matter. Now, that school's principal tells our own Matthew Chance in Moscow that he can't confirm the closure, and he's waiting for specific details. But we know that more measures are on the way. Russia's foreign ministry spokeswoman said in a statement on Facebook that Russia will announce retaliation measures on Friday, saying, quote, tomorrow will be the official statements, countermeasures, and lots of other things. Jim?
It's going to continue. We'll be following it. Athena Jones, thanks very much. Now, the Trump response, which, as we mentioned at the top, was notably brief. It said, in full, quote, it's time for our country to move on to bigger and better things. Nevertheless, in the interest of our country and its great people, I will meet with leaders of the intelligence community next week in order to be updated on the facts of this situation, end quote. More now from CNN's Sunlen Sarfati, who joins us from just outside Mar-a-Lago. So, Sunlen, have those around President-elect Trump been echoing what was in that sentiment, in effect expressing doubt, continued doubts about this assessment?
That's right, Jim, and that's why this very short statement by President-elect Donald Trump should really come at no surprise, because it really does keep in line with the posture that he and members of his transition team have been taking in the last days and weeks about this, and that is really to dismiss the claims of the intelligence community, the conclusions, I should say, of the intelligence community, and really trying to deflect blame away from the Russians on this, and really a lot of expressions of doubt that Russia was behind this. We heard from Sean Spicer, who, of course, is the incoming White House press secretary once they take over in January. Him today say, in essence, point blank, that they need more solid proof from the intelligence community why they're making these conclusions, and calling on the intelligence community to do so in a public way. Now, we know that President-elect Donald Trump will receive a private briefing at some point next week. We know that that likely is going to happen in New York City, where potentially he would be presented with some of the evidence that they found.
I mean, but he's already been getting daily briefings, right? I mean, he hasn't taken them every day. What does he expect to get in that briefing that he hasn't already seen?
That's a very good point. He did receive his most recent intelligence briefing, we know, yesterday here at his resort here in Florida, and there has been much to say whether he's getting enough of these briefings, getting them a few times, I believe 3 times a week. But clearly this is a little bit of due diligence on the president-elect's part, although he's saying in this statement a very stern, let's move on, let's move past this. He's also saying, but look, I will take a meeting with the intelligence community. I think most interesting will be to see what comes out of that meeting, what Donald Trump says afterwards. Does it change what he's saying? Does it change anything going forward? Of course, one of the biggest questions that this statement just doesn't answer is, will Trump, as president, once he takes over after January 20th, will he reverse these sanctions as the new president or not?
and he'll be president. He can do it. Sunland Serfaty, thanks very much. Back with the panel, and joining us as well this hour is Trump supporter Jeffrey Lord. Jeffrey Lord, help me out here. We've known each other a while. We have open and frank conversations.
Yes.
What's going on here? Why this continue? And again, he's isolated on this. Republican leaders, I mean, hardcore leaders, McConnell, Ryan, they say it's Russia. They say they want actually harsher penalties. Why is Donald Trump picking a fight? It's not just with the Obama administration, it's with his own party.
Well, a couple things here. Number one, he wants the facts, that's for sure. There's no question that I'm sure that's exactly.
But Jeffrey Lord, come on, it's a little, I mean, it's the intelligence community. I mean, we all want the facts. He's been getting briefed 3-4 times a week, you know.
Jim, look, let me just tell you here, and this is no news, whether it was President Bush and the weapons of mass destruction or President Kennedy. I have found a quote from President Kennedy in the New York Times in a story that the New York Times wrote on the CIA in 1966, and it says that after the Bay of Pigs disaster, in which JFK was so ill-advised by the CIA...
We know the intelligence community has made mistakes before. On the Bay of Pigs, on WMD, we know that.
Scatter it. All right, I'm saying to you, these people can make mistakes.
No question, but they can also get things. They can get things right. They got it right that China hacked the U.S. They got it right that North Korea hacked Sony. They found Bin Laden. I mean, I'm not shilling for the intelligence community. It's basically the strategy, it seems, to say that
we need a new set of eyes on the intelligence. We need a new set of eyes on the intelligence community. And I think that's what the president will bring. And let's be candid here. You yourself just reported a little bit ago that the Obama administration was concerned about this, but didn't want to bring it up during the campaign because they would, quote unquote, taint, or however you said it, the possible Hillary Clinton election. I mean, in other words, there's politics at play here. And I can assure you, as somebody who's been in the White House and worked on Capitol Hill, these bureaucracies are filled with politics on occasion. Let's not be about
it. That's a pretty broad charge to say that the 16 intelligence agencies are motivated here. What the president does with the intelligence is one thing, but you're in effect saying that this assessment is based on politics.
What I'm saying here is he wants to see the facts, the evidence. And by the way, no small thing here. If the story here is influence of non-citizens, Vladimir Putin and Russians or whatever, on the American government in an election, then that goes to every non-citizen who may have voted in America for the last election.
That's a pretty dramatic turn. Jonathan, let me get. We're not talking about that right now.
Let me first.
Actually, Jeffrey, if we're talking about evidence, then let's see evidence of the 2-3 million people who supposedly fakely voted this election. But Jonathan, what's your reaction to this? What's happening here? What's your reaction to that line of argument?
So let's the other day about this. I mean, I'm sorry, it's out there.
Jeffrey,
let's investigate. Let's find out.
Okay, Jeff.
There's no basis to 2 or 3 million people who voted legally. There's just none. In fact, studies have been done, and they found like half a dozen people.
Okay, guys,
so let's drop that.
Go back to your corner.
Jonathan, what's your reaction?
Let me first of all wish my friend Jeff and Jim and Monica happy holidays, happy New Year. Haven't seen Jeff in a while. Somewhat what I said in the last segment, and Jeff is going to like the first part of what I said, which is, as I said before, Jim, I don't trust the Central Intelligence Agency. I think it is wise for us to exercise a fair amount of skepticism if the facts are not presented openly to the American people. That doesn't mean that I don't think that Vladimir Putin is a thug and a xenophobe and a dangerous individual. I just think that looking at history, the CIA, and I'm sorry, they are trained to lie. This is what they do, if you go back to the Church Committee hearings in the 1970s over what the CIA did in assassination. Now, I am not defending, when I say that, Donald Trump. Let me be clear about that, because the second point I'm going to make, which I made before, and Jeff isn't going to like this one, part of the problem is that Donald Trump is not capable of understanding either what Russia did, he's not capable of understanding the difference between our nuclear weapon triad, he does not understand that over the last 30 and 40 years, Republican and Democratic administrations have sought to reduce nuclear weapons. Donald Trump is essentially foreshadowing an arms race. He is a dangerous ignoramus. And so when we're now confronted with the situation of trying to analyze this information, we're asking someone who is not capable of understanding.
Respectfully, John.
Monica.
Respectfully, John.
Well, Jeffrey, I do want to give you a chance to get back in.
Set these relations, and now they're in tatters. That's dangerous ignoramus.
Well, and Jeffrey, it's a fair point. The Obama administration started with a reset. It failed. George W. Bush started with, I could see into Putin's eye, ended up with the invasion of Georgia at the end. So successive presidents of both parties have misread Russia dramatically.
Ronald Reagan.
Monica, I do want to ask you what the view from inside the Trump camp is, because is it just that they see this push to investigate as a way to delegitimize his election, or is there also a sincere and substantive doubt that Russia is behind these attacks? Or perhaps is there both?
I think there's both, but I think the first is clearly the thing that gets Trump's goat. And, you know, he's responding, I think, to that when he says, let's move on. That's the most important thing. He's going to get an intelligence briefing next week, but come on. We know how he has responded to a lot of the intelligence briefings. He wants to move on. His advisors tell me we're going to go on American jobs. We're going to fight ISIS. And another advisor told me this afternoon that he is watching, and they're kind of shocked that Obama is acting tougher in the last 4 days against the two countries that Trump wants to improve relations with, Israel and Russia, than he's acted in the last 4 years against ISIS. So they're saying we want to be tough on ISIS, and suddenly Obama in the last 3 weeks of his administration is tough on Russia and Israel.
Well, there's a difference
Monica,
between Israel and
Jeffrey, I'll give you the last, well, actually, Jonathan, I'll give you a last thought on Jeffrey before we go. We do have to go. I'd be...
Who gets the last word?
Jeffrey would never talk to me again if I didn't give him another. But Jonathan, quick thought, and then Jeffrey.
I was just going to say, talking about Russian hacking.
Facts, the facts. That's all Donald Trump wants.
Talking about Russian hacking is not the same thing. Is not the same thing as the administration taking a completely moral and principled position to abstain from a resolution on Palestine and on the settlements, which the entire settlements, as it should.
Okay, gentlemen and ladies, thanks to all of you. I want to wish you all sincerely a very happy New Year.
Same to you.
Okay, happy New Year, everyone.
Coming up next is CNN exclusive on how much U.S. intelligence may know about where to find the leader of ISIS and presumably make him either the captured or late leader of ISIS. Later, the passing of Debbie Reynolds just a day after her daughter, Carrie Fisher, died. And the question, can you really die of a broken heart? Some answers just ahead.